In today's episode, I am having a conversation with Gilbert George. Gilbert is the Director of Corporate Governance at Nottingham University's Hospital Trust, which is one of the largest NHS trusts and one of the largest employers in the region. Gilbert speaks to us about the importance of governance and process and accountability, but not in a boring way. And I describe Gilbert behind the scenes when we have conversations as a governance czar. What's really interesting about Gilbert is his career journey, where he started from, the things that helped him along the way, and starting off in academia, moving into the government and working for the Cabinet Office, and then coming into the NHS. He really brings to me accountability, openness and transparency to life. And he speaks about this in our conversation. He shares insights and advice that will help other aspiring senior leaders from underrepresented groups. And one thing that Gilbert didn't share, because he is very humble and modest in how he speaks with me, is that he's also the judge of the upcoming Caribbean Global Awards, which was actually advertised across Times Square in New York. So I hope you'll enjoy this conversation and appreciate the insights and advice that Gilbert shares with us today. Gilbert, hi.
Hi.
It's really good to have you here, and welcome to Bravery in the Boardroom. I think I had to work a little bit to get into your diary, but I really appreciate you being here. I know a lot about you, but it'd be great for the audience to just hear a little bit more about you and your current role and responsibility.
Indeed. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to express myself more about some of the things that I've done, but more importantly about the people that have actually helped me to get to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of my background, for those who don't know me, I'm Gilbert George. I'm an Executive Director and Board Member of Nottingham University. My parents are from St Lucian, the Caribbean. I was born in England. And I think for me, a lot in terms of who I am as a person, having shaped by my mother and my father, particularly my mother, in terms of the values that she instilled in me, that still carries to this very day, and really directs me a lot in the way that I conduct myself, behave, and the way that I engage with people as well. So I've had a very, very privileged upbringing in that respect, and also my professional career, I would say. And just short in terms of my career today, I started off in academia, working across the university sectors into my first senior position, working across all the universities in England, Scotland and Wales, and attending the main committee meeting and also main committee dinners, which was an insight in terms of those who had a very privileged background, I would say, what it means to go and have a 7-course dinner and all the different ways you can think about. Well, I was given that privilege and was there for over 8 years. Then from working in academia, I went on to work in government for various government quangos, but ended up being an exec director of one of the only 2 quangos that was directly under the Cabinet Office Minister. And at that time it was Ed Miliband. And so I got a real insight into the workings and mechanics of government. And more importantly, I think I learned an awful lot from Ed Miliband, because not only was he our lead, but also we socialised in the sense that we were able to go out to dinners and things like that, private dinners, and discuss things that we were doing. So that was a real insight into the operations of government, especially in the Cabinet Office, being at the centre of government, seeing everything that was going on. And then in the last sort of 12, 13 years, I've been working in NHS, doing quite a lot of consultancy work as a director. But now I'm working for Nottingham University Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in the country, an executive and board member. And my portfolio is fairly broad. I cover governance, legal, risk, inclusion, chaplaincy and Speak Up Guardians.
Can you add anything else in there?
Yes. Global health management, which is it's a completely different area altogether in terms of what it requires to involve with different nationalities and different countries and various senior figures, be it prime ministers or presidents and all the rest of it. So yeah, I have a very, very full day and a very full life, I would say.
And just listening to what you shared there, Gilbert, about some of what you've been exposed to. That's what you're talking about, wasn't it? Some of the insights and exposure that you had, that now it feels like sponsorship's quite a buzzword, isn't it? We hear a lot about sponsorship, but just listening to you there, you had that opportunity to, I want to say informal sponsorship, but being exposed and being able to see things that have come through now into your senior leadership career.
The things that I learned when I was in academia, remember I come from a very, very humble background and upbringing, not exposed to any of the fine etiquettes that we would find in society today. But when going into that vice chancellor's environment and having to go to the main committee meetings and then go to dinner and then be expected to converse with these vice chancellors, I was the youngest person there, the only black person there, not knowing what to do, what to say. But my colleagues that I worked with, a number of them were Oxbridge, had, again, privileged backgrounds, and they took me under their wing. And when I mean to say they took me under their wing, they really did. And that requires not only the ability to do one's job, but also the etiquette side as well, the social side. So my own fellow colleagues would take me to the theatre, to the ballet, to the opera house, explain all the wines. And so when I was in that environment with the vice chancellors, I could converse because I knew it a bit more than what I'd actually been brought up with. And it's purely down to my fellow work colleagues who took me under their wings, as it were, and helped me. And that has actually really put me in good stead for the rest of my career.
So before we go any deeper, because I want to ask you about your journey and your career journey, I always ask this question to our guests. How would you describe your leadership style in 3 words?
Yeah. I think collaboration is important because I think none of us can get anywhere without working with other people. So that's really important. I describe myself being strategic, but strategic in a governance sense. I'm really, governance is very much to my fore and to my heart and to the values that I have. And so I'm very strategic in that way of thinking when it comes to governance. And I suppose the other area that I'm really that's close to my heart is that I see myself in a leadership role as supportive. I believe in developing and encouraging and supporting my staff to reach their maximum, the best of their abilities. And that requires you to be interested in the individuals that you're working with. It's not a lip service position. It's something that people can see whether you're for real by the way that you behave and engage and conduct yourself, and they will see where you're, that you're the real person. And I think most of my staff will say that I'm engaging that way. And that comes from my parents. They taught me the values of being respectful and honest and engaging with all sorts of people. And that's part of my personality and character.
Yeah. So true what you said there about people seeing through it, isn't it? There's so many kind of buzz phrases, isn't it? Bring your authentic self to work. We're here to support you, want everyone to belong. But as you say, colleagues absolutely see through that if you're just saying it and actually you're not feeling or living it. So I really hear you on that. So let me come back to your career journey, because I know I am going to come back to some of the other roles that you hold as well. So that long portfolio at NUH, there's still a whole load of other things you do. But you spoke about your career journey and, starting off in academia, then coming through to the latter part of your career now being in the NHS. I'd like to know a little bit more about any challenges that you experienced along the way.
Yeah, I suppose especially when you're starting off in your professional career, I suppose we all have that thing about whether we can make it, in the sense of, do we have the confidence? Most of us will lack confidence. And that's why I learned how important it is in terms of wanting to, first of all, I say it's 3 things. One, you've got to decide to want to do good and do well in whatever you do, whatever profession that you profess to be in, to want to do good. The second thing is another aspect that we don't often think about, but it's really important, that we recognize that we need to network in order to better ourselves.
Oh, yes.
And if you don't do that, no matter who you are, you won't fulfill your objective to the whole, as it were. So that's really important. And once you recognize those 2 things, then it is really having that strong desire to push yourself to the nth degree, but be professional in all that you do.
So, and for you, you were saying about that confidence. Are these challenges that you experienced when you were progressing?
Yeah, I would say. I think it goes right back to my school days. I went to an all-boys school, and I can remember drafting an essay, and my teacher say it wasn't good enough and tore it up in front of all my classmates and said, go back and do it again. And I thought, oh, okay, right. So sometimes things in life can actually knock you back a bit, no matter how small they are. But I think as you develop and as you become a bit more successful, you get a bit more confident. But as you all know in life, it's one thing to be confident, but it's another thing to be overconfident and allow things to go to your head. So you need to always maintain a balance. But confidence is important, and I try to encourage folks that have got ability to fulfill their abilities and their what they desire to do.
And so just picking up on, you shared about some of the things, like I said, that helped you on your journey, and also hearing about your parents and that upbringing that instilled in you. Let's fast forward to where you are now. You're one of very few ethnically diverse directors of corporate governance and senior leaders in the corporate governance space, because yes, you hold your role and portfolio at Nottingham, but I also know you hold a number of other roles, and you have, I teasingly call you the governance czar behind closed doors, right? In terms of really that national profile and prominence that you have around governance and risk. But what, in your view, should be prioritized to increase diversity in senior leadership so we are seeing more diversity in roles like yours?
Indeed. So the one thing I will hold true to in terms of principle, that I only believe that anyone that is appointed to a position should be appointed on merit. But having said that, I also recognise that there are some folks who are at a disadvantage, and some of this could be quite blatant racism, some of it could be other factors. But what I see important in my role in helping others to fulfil their objectives is how I mentor and support them. So what I tend to do in terms of my role is that I will speak to many, many different folks of all different ethnicity. But you tend to find a lot of the Black and West Caribbean folks will come to me. They will find it easy to approach me and ask me certain questions about how I can either support them or how they can support themselves to do better. So I think as a board member, what's really important that you maintain your high professional standards, you make yourself available to others so that you can encourage and mentor where you can. And then the third thing, in the way that you conduct yourself at meetings, people see you for what you are, the expert in your field. And so they don't look at your skin and look at your colour. What they look at is your ability and the expertise that you have and what you bring to the table at a board meeting or at a committee meeting.
What we've definitely heard, picking up on your last point there, we definitely heard that colleagues feel, perceive, and sometimes receive that because they are different, because they are a different skin colour or whatever that difference is that they represent with, they feel and they are sometimes scrutinised differently. What would you say to that when people are experiencing that?
Yeah, well, I said that's not the society that we all want to strive for. That's the first thing. The second thing, we know we don't live in a perfect world. But thirdly, what can we do about the situation? And that's where we've got to galvanise ourselves mentally to want to do better. And so that's why I say, if you can network, meet people that can encourage you, support you, mentor you, to help you improve, you can make it. I mean, I always say to folks about the ceiling, the ceiling as I see it is being a glass ceiling. And for me, a glass ceiling is there to be broken. It's not there to hold you in forever. It can be broken. It may be tough glass, but you can still break it. You can still break through those barriers if you've got the determination and the ability to do so. And I will look back and reflect on my life. So I felt to a certain extent I've been able to achieve that. But me achieving what I've achieved is for others to see they too can achieve, and even more than that, they can go further than that. And so it's really just setting a path that others have followed, that we're treading the same way, in the hope that others who've got the ability and the talent can get there.
And listening to what you were saying there about, you being open and available to both informal and formal mentoring, and knowing that colleagues who come from the same background, that they feel more comfortable to come and speak with you. So, and your trust, as you said, is one of the largest in the country. How many staff?
So we've got over 20,000 staff, and if you include some of the agency, you could take up to 22,000. So it's a lot of people.
So one of the biggest employers in the region as well.
Yeah.
How are you using your power and influence in the boardroom in relation to that to tackle discrimination and inequalities, both locally in the community, but you mentioned global health, and also further afield?
Yeah, so there's lots there that I think we've done lots more to be done. So one of the things we've introduced in regards to our trust board approved was what we referred to as our workforce inclusion strategy, which really sets a landscape as to where we want to move as an organisation and for our employees to move with us in terms of being an open, transparent, inclusive organisation, and understand what potentially are the barriers to that, and more importantly, what are we going to do as a board to break those barriers down. And so for me, leading on that piece of work with my director of inclusion and presenting that at the trust board, I got a lot of pride that day and a tremendous amount of feeling of goodwill. And we know this has actually resonated in our organisation, because so many folks have come and said to us, we really like this strategy, but it's not just a strategy on a page. It is the strategies to be led by and to have traction with colleagues, but more importantly, to move people on this journey. And we're finding that now, and the strategy's been out since January, but we're finding that the traction with it is being almost overwhelming. We held a conference on inclusion just in May, and someone said they've never ever been to a conference of this size with so much goodwill, good spirit. It was a joyous occasion. So that's one of the things that we've done at the board, and the board at Nottingham are fully backing the inclusion direction that we're going. That's brilliant. The other thing that we've done quite recently, I was able to represent our chief executive in Nottingham, where we had those terrible situations going throughout the country in terms of the discrimination and the racial bias that was being shown. But I was able to go amongst all the leaders in Nottingham and say a few words about how at Nottingham University we are not tolerating discrimination of any sort. One of the most proactive ways in which we've dealt with dealing with the matter is in our hospital. Unfortunately, we do get a few patients who are untoward to our staff, in the sense that not only are they sometimes violent or aggressive, but they also use racial abusive language towards them. We make it very clear that we didn't tolerate that. And in fact, the local TV station, and I think it's ITV, interviewed me on this very matter, wanting to know what stance and what we was doing proactively in dealing with people who are acting racially, violently, aggressively towards our staff. And we've indicated through our processes and what we do that we're taking this very, very serious. So that's just another sort of little way, shall I say, in which we're really demonstrating that we're not tolerating any form of racism. And perhaps the other thing that I'm really keen on, and we're really proud at Nottingham University, and one of the very few hospitals ever to get involved in this area of work, and that's global health management. 40% of our staff are from ethnic minorities. One of the things that we do is work with other countries, particularly some of the African countries and the West Africans and the Caribbeans, on how we can help them in collaboration on health matters. And I've just started off a discussion with some of the Caribbean islands, in particular Barbados and St Lucia, and how we may be able to work with them in partnership on diabetes, because that's very prevalent in those parts of the world. And so for us at Nottingham, not only are we caring for the people in our locality, but we feel we have a responsibility for those who aren't from our county, but we have lots of their folks living in our county, working for the hospital, giving their very best. And this is a way of giving back, as it were. But it's not just a two-way thing. It's not a one-way thing, shall I say. What we're keen on when we're working with these other countries is about a two-way partnership.
That's right.
Whilst they can learn from us, we can certainly learn from them.
Absolutely.
And so we're not going there saying we know it all, but it's a two-way working collaboration.
Yeah, and I think, it's so important what you said there about you. I mean, you said at the beginning, isn't it? Collaboration and collaborative is one of the words you'd use to describe your leadership. But I think, as you said there, what is it we can learn? I wanted to come back to, you mentioned about openness and transparency. We mentioned about your trust being one of the largest, and you spoke about the commitment of the board to move forward with inclusion and being clear on what you tolerate and what you don't. Your trust has been in the news a lot, isn't it? It's been in the press, and you mentioned there about your portfolio and what you hold. What's the message that you'd give there? We have other senior leaders who work in environments where they are the part of the board. You have got untoward incidents, you have got that press, you have got care that hasn't been to the standard that's been required. How do you handle that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that first, and as a board, we recognise this, although many of these things have happened, particularly in maternity, many, many years ago, 2017, 2018, but what we're saying, whilst we're on the board, it's our responsibility. We're not looking back to see who was there at the time when these things happened. What we're concerned about is where we are today. And so we fully embrace all the things that have been said that have not been right in terms of how patients have received their treatment and their care, and that we've been at fault, and we put our hands up wholeheartedly to recognise we have done wrong towards the patients that we are there to be serving. What's important for the board as well as recognising that is what we're going to do about it. And that's really, really key. So there's been a huge drive in the organisation in terms of understanding the the behaviour of some of our staff in terms of the psychology aspect of it, in terms of clinical aspects of it, in terms of how they deal with each other and how they deal with the patients. For whatever reason, some folks have dealt and said things that are not appropriate for public servants and saying these things in closed doors or through emails, and that's inappropriate. And so we've really had a really strong drive to try to help our colleagues to help themselves in how we basically treating our patients and caring for them. We recognise there's still a long way to go, because there are still some things that will come out in the national press that will be horrifying. And we recognise it's horrifying, but we also recognise we've got to do something about it, and that's why we're here to do it.
Yeah. And I think the openness and transparency, as you say, is important, but then the actions and accountability that follow through. So following through on that, the responsibilities of being a board member can be quite heavy, right? They can be. What difference does it make to have a more diverse board, in your opinion?
Yeah. So I see diversity in two respects when it comes to board. I see one's the lens of looking at, as it were, the colour of the board is one aspect. And the second aspect for me when I look at diversity is the different backgrounds we come from in terms of our social upbringing. Because I think there's two factors when played out where you've got a diversity really brings out the best in the board's decision-making abilities. And for me, particularly being, and many of the boards I've sat, I've only been the black person there. You sometimes see things through lenses that other colleagues might not see
100%.
because of your upbringing.
100%.
And it's being able to bring those lenses to the table and raise questions as appropriate or discussion or to challenge helps the board then to have a much more holistic view of a matter rather than a narrow view. And that's why it's important when I'm at a board, I only speak at the board meeting when I'm going to add value to this discussion. But often it is, because of my background, I see many, many things that lend itself to me to say a few words. And I think what I'm really, really wholeheartedly encouraged with our board is the embracing of differing views and then being able to discuss that and come to a decision where we generally have consensus. And therefore, I think our boards are mature in that. But you do need people from different backgrounds in terms of colour, I would say, and also in terms of their social upbringing to come to the table and discuss matters pertaining to our patients in our locality and make the best decisions for them.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd add to that about diversity of thought, because that's what brings it together. I think you answered my next question, which was about ensuring your voice is heard. And what I heard from you there about describing your own board is that you do have equity. You choose when you voice it, because that's what I heard you say. I've definitely been in boardrooms where some people are talking for the sake of talking. So I know what you mean. But actually hearing you say that you've got equity of voice, it's valued, and you're able to bring that, whose lens are we looking through here? Have we looked through this lens?
Well, one of the things at the board, I think, that gives me my position, the gravitas in terms of the board meetings, being the exec governance lead, the chairman will always often look to me. So once the discussion's been rounded off, he would just look to me, says, is there anything that we need to be mindful of, Gilbert, before we make the decision? And so for me, it gives me that weight, as it were, responsibility of guiding the chair so that we are open and transparent and making the best decision and that we're not falling foul of any legal matters or the law, etc. And so it carries quite a big responsibility that in the board meeting, and he always looks to me in that respect.
So seeing that balance of, are we having an equitable, is there anyone we're missing in this conversation? Is there any aspect that we're not seeing? And being able to have that before consensus, but then also that check from that assurance and accountability perspective.
Absolutely.
Can we check it from that, and you seeing your role in both of those?
Absolutely. And one thing I do at the board meeting itself is that if the chair didn't see someone's hand, as it were, I'd bring to the chair's attention that so-and-so would like to say a few words. And then also when we're making decisions at the board itself, remembering our board members about that aspect of accountability, that decisions that we have made individually and collectively, we're responsible for that decision. And if it were to go wrong, then it's down to us individually and as a collective. And that's what we've got to always remember. But I think I'm privileged to work with a chairperson who I can't really use words to describe his openness, transparency, his honesty, and his wanting to do what is good. And my chief executive is almost a mirror image of him.
In terms of those values.
Absolutely. So I find my job easy in that respect because I'm working with people that are honest and truthful and want to do what is right for the people of Nottingham.
And, you know, we were interviewing another leader this morning, and I remember, and they were speaking about this, touching on what you're getting at there about the integrity of your chair and CEO, you know, the values that your chair and CEO, the type of leader that they are. And actually, when you are looking for, seeking out, or even if you're headhunted, which I think you were in this role, if you're headhunted, doing your homework, doing your due diligence about what is the leadership and values, you know, what are you seeing in practice here? And I think it's challenging. You know, I'm listening to what you're sharing about, like I said, if you're looking at what's going on in the press, what's happened at your trust in the past, you know, it's deeply challenging. But also what I'm hearing you say is, yes, that's true. As the board, we have to stand up and deal with that and address that. But we can make sure that our values are those of openness and transparency about how we do that and how we move forward. So listening to you and through our conversation, you've given some really helpful advice to those who may be aspiring into senior leadership, particularly from underrepresented groups. Is there any other final nuggets you'd want to share for colleagues, especially who want to progress into the boardroom?
Indeed. Well, this is a very simple one, and it's really this, really. Never forget who you are and where you come from. Because who you are and where you come from is who you are as a person, and that's how you're going to flourish. So I've been privileged to work at many organisations. I just got a call last week to discuss with a Prince of Saudi Arabia to do a presentation. Called me out of the blue and wanted to meet with me to discuss it. I've been at Oxford University and worked there. And I said, worked with vice chancellors. I've worked in the States. I've gone to United Nations and presented and won a contract to do the first research into China before China opened up. So I've had lots and some nuggets of things that have gone really, really well. But the most important thing I always boil down to, I'm just me, who I am, and my cousins, my relatives, all my family know who I am as I am.
Yes, I really hear that, and in getting to know you a little bit more, I know that's very much what grounds you as well. And you know, you've been very modest in what you've spoken about, but I also know, like I touched on the challenge of working at a large trust that is undergoing a lot of challenge and scrutiny. But even the journey that you've had in your career, many times being the only one, being the first, being the only lonely, as sometimes it's described, isn't it? That you've worked through that and had a level of determination, I think. But now you are in a position of power and a position of privilege. I know about some of the work you do behind the scenes. And like I said, that real desire in you to raise the standard. Now, governance might be boring to some people, but governance underpins everything that you do in an organisation. Really seeing your desire and determination to raise the standard of governance and risk and also helping people to understand it. Because a lot of the time people shy away from governance because they don't understand it. And I know that a lot of the work you do on your seminars, on the talks that you give as well, really are trying to demystify it and to help colleagues navigate the twists and turns of those processes. So just thank you for what you do there, because I know behind the scenes that you're always willing to share and give that advice and guidance to people. And I hope from the conversation that we've had today, there may be a few listeners who are just slightly more interested in what a career in governance or assurance may look like for them. Because I think, I don't like process, but I understand the importance of governance. So thank you for sharing that.
And I think this add on and finish off with one final comment, and it's more forward looking, as it were. Is that with governance, what governance is now it's likely to be different in the future. The introduction and the exploratory avenues that are out there for AI, it's just tremendous. It's just so much that could be available to us.
Yeah.
And we're only just scratching the surface as we speak. And I know in the next 5 or 10 years, it's going to be it's going to change things. So AI is the way to go, and governance.
Yeah. I hear you. So almost watch this space. And I know, gosh, at the time of recording this, it was just a few weeks ago, wasn't it, that you held a seminar that was talking about the impact and the future of AI in relation to governance. So before I let you go, because I know you are a busy man, a final question I ask all of my guests: what do you do to maintain balance and look after you?
Yeah, that's really important, because I can honestly say that one can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and be working up to 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening non-stop on a regular occurrence. But we're all human, and we do need to have balance. And one of the things I've been doing quite of late, in fact, in terms of getting my balance, is doing a bit of hiking.
Yeah.
So I've been going out to different parts of England and just going out for a 5 or 6 hour walk. 2 weeks back, it was in Marlborough in Wiltshire. Previous to that, I'd been up to Snowdonia, which is really great. And there's a few places in Derbyshire that I'm planning to do. So what I'm now doing is perhaps once a month or once every 6 weeks is actually go to somewhere in England and go for a 6 hour walk and just enjoy the scenery. And that helps me chill.
Okay. So that's one I haven't heard before, but interesting. So, maybe you can start a vlog. Keep us posted on your different visits and hikes, where you go. Yeah, definitely. But Gilbert, thank you so much for your time today. I know some of the insights and advice that you shared will really help other colleagues on their career journey. So thank you for today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.